Zoom is new. I tell you, man, people are still having problems with that the Zoom thing.
Yeah, I can't. Everyone, this is Roy Foreman here. Not only is he brother to the great heavyweight champion George Foreman and has worked with him extensively, but he also is very accomplished as a commentator. He's trained people himself. He was, I believe, you were actually George's inspiration for starting the community center he started when he saw you working with the youth, teaching them boxing.
Right.
And he's worked as a manager as well. So a lot of stuff and seen a lot of history. And we are honored to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to start off by asking some questions that the viewers came up with. I thought that would be fun and kind of a cool way to get the ball rolling.
That's a good way to start it, yes.
Yeah. So let's see. If I could find the questions. Here they are. So the most upvoted comment was actually someone asking about cardio, which really surprised me. I don't know if it's because of George's really unique way of training, like with someone mentioned like him like dragging cars or like just chopping wood, stuff like that. But I guess a lot of people need work on their endurance. So let's start off with that question.
Well, this is the thing about when you're 23 years of age and 20 when George first started boxing, some things are natural, right? We can run a little bit longer when we're younger than, I couldn't, but some of us can. You can run a little bit longer when you're younger, right? And then you get into your mid-20s, it takes a lot of work to do what you could do when you were 20.
And
so when George
hurts.
came back, and I'm assuming most of them are probably more or less asking about the later George, the 36-year-old George that came back.
Yeah, because he had better stamina in his older age than he had in his younger years.
In his youngest, well, because you when you're young, you rely on everything that you think your body can do. But when you get older, you realize there's a lot of things your body can't do, so you got to invent ways to make it better. One of those things was George always chopped trees. He always did that. He did the physical things, the running and the sparring in the gym. But then all of a sudden, when you're 36 years old, you have to pull up those muscles that you haven't used in 10 years. Or they were just naturally, when you were younger, you just, you grabbed it, picked it up, you didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But now you're 36, 37, 40 years old. You have to kind of think about, okay, how long can I do this? So the answer to the cardio becomes, I have to work on, do I want to pick up 50 pounds 3 times fast, or do I want to pick up 100 pounds 20 times and do it at a better pace? And then you increase. That's how you increase your stamina, by doing those things. You do the same thing. You do them in more increments. And then as you get used to it, you start slowing down. So now you can do that thing you were doing in 10 minutes. Now you can do it in 5, and you build up just enough where your oxygen level is just is where it should be at that particular age, or better than what it should be.
So, in other words, instead of just going as hard as you can one time, you have to think very clearly about how can I get more work in over a longer period of time, and then just kind of systematically get that work closer and closer and closer together in a steady pace.
That's
where you're
what
not
you
going
do.
To injure yourself.
And that's why, if you notice, I don't know what someone asked that question, but when you get to it, you're going to see that George never sat down in between his fights.
Yeah.
Well, that was the reason for it. We trained, the average 10-round fights is 40 minutes. So what do you do with the 9 rounds with the 9 rounds in between, of course? So we trained for 45 minutes steadily. And that included the 1 minute of going to the stairs. So rather than do that, you keep your body down where you don't drop down. And then when you're 260 pounds, it takes a little bit more to kind of get up and down. But the idea is you train for 45 minutes. That way your body is on that is on that clock of 45 minutes. I know I have to get out here and fight. So rather than sitting down, all of that is part of it.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. On to the next one. Were you against or for your brother making his comeback at the beginning?
Well, that's a hard question, because when George retired the first time, I thought, man, we're giving up the next 10 years in this sport. because he was only 26, 27 years of age.
So young to retire.
So young to retire. And it wasn't because he had been physically beaten. It was because of this religious experience, and he decided that was his decision. Nobody tried. Well, yes, I can't say that because Don King, the television network, they were coming. George, we need you. You're the Mike Tyson of this era. You're the one that's knocking out guys, and people are tuning into ABC to see you knock guys out. You might lose a fight, but still come back. So the idea of the comeback. I was actually in Kingston, Jamaica. Now this is a funny. I'll tell you the story if you don't mind. It won't be that. It's not that long.
No. Keep as long as you want. We have all the time in the world.
I was working for the United States Information Agency at the time, the State Department, as a liaison to the islands, right? So I was actually in Jamaica, and I had been working with some of the young boxing teams there, and back then, in the 80s, I know, right? But back then, over there, you kind of got the news the next day, 2 or 3 days later. You don't always get it right now. So this young kid I've been working with comes to me and says, "Oh, Mr. Foreman." I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, your brother's going to box again, right?" And I'm like, that's just some writer that had nothing to do. So he decided I'll write this story.
So you didn't believe it?
No. Because I'm like, I've left the United States and George is just doing what he want to do now. Because we had just started the youth center about 2 years before that. That was our whole project. That was the project we was working on with the youth center, George Foreman Youth and Community Center. That was our project. But they had asked me to come do these to do these programs to different countries. So I took that up. Now you have to make some money. You still got to earn a little money. So this kid, I'm like, man, please, So maybe I think I came for a vacation. I came back 4 to 6 months later, right? And I go in the gym by this time. Here's George just hitting the heavy bag. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, okay, all right. And so I'm sitting there. I say, boy, the craziest thing I ever seen. Somebody in Jamaica told me, you're going to box again. He said, yeah.
That's it.
I said, well, you know what we got to do? He said, yeah, that's it. He said, yeah, I know what we got to do. All right. That was it. From that point on, but I because in between that, I used to work for the United States Olympic Committee, Committee, USOC. So I traveled. There was another guy, Ed Silverglade, who was Bruce Silverglade's father. If you know the gym in New York, Silverglade's gym. His father at the time was director of USA Boxing. And there was a guy by the name of Roosevelt Sanders that I worked under, right? But I got a chance to travel with all of the fighters, the young up-and-coming the Olympic team guys. So I got a chance to see those guys. And I honestly had watched David over the last 8 years. I honestly see no one that I didn't think George could have beat at 36 years of age. Because remember, Tyson didn't travel with us much on the teams. We didn't see him because Custody Amato was pretty careful to let him pretty much stay in New York. Every once in a while, he'd go outside. Then it came time for the USA Amateur Championships. He had got beat. I think Henry Tillman beat him, I think it was. I think it was Tillman. And so he was really out of the picture. I didn't see Tyson. So all I seen was guys. I seen Tillman. I saw Briggs. I saw, I'm trying to think of some of the other, tell you about the heavyweights that were around at that time. But basically, these were the heavyweights I seen. And I actually thought, this is the future of the heavyweight championship. Larry Holmes was still champion.
That was one of the questions. There's a lot of questions about how you think Foreman would have done against different heavyweights had they fought. Yeah, that was one of the questions. Tyson was one of the questions. Okay. Yeah.
Well, okay, but doing that, so to answer the question is a long, kind of long, but the answer to the question was, I didn't see anybody. Tyson was the only one I seen at the time because Holyfield was then light heavyweight. Cruiser, whatever he was. I didn't expect him to move up. Michael Spinks, was thinking about doing this thing, but your biggest guys, Bone Crusher Smith, some average heavyweight guys, Pinklin Thomases. I watched all those guys. Like I said, there was nobody I thought George couldn't beat, but I knew that it wasn't going to be either. My biggest concern, George was 325 pounds.
Yeah, how are you going to last 12 rounds at 325 pounds?
Now, 12? Yeah. How about one at 325?
Yeah. Well, he shed the weight like really fast though, right?
He did.
Like in record time.
He did. He did. He went down from 325 to his first fight was 267. And that was like in
how many months did that take? 5 or 6 months?
5 months. About 5 or 6 months. If that, man. Yeah. I mean, George was the kind of guy, man, that when he was dedicated, that was it. You know, he used to get on my nerves sometimes. He was too dedicated, but he made that.
That's another kind of intensity. That's laser focus to lose that much weight that quickly.
But you know what, David? When he became a minister, when he decided to turn down all the things that he turned down during that period to become a minister, to focus in on what he wanted to do, I had no doubt about he could do it. Had George had that same dedication, 22-year-old George, I think George holds the championship for 15 years. I really do.
Oh, yeah. If Ali hadn't come along, who knows how long he would have held it unbroken, too.
Well, you know what? I say this with the great utmost respect with Ali. Ali was perhaps the second greatest fighter. If you look at Joe Louis, to me, on maybe, second 1-2. Let's put 1A, 1B. Let's put it like that. But I know that during that period in the 70s, once George won the title, in his mind, he thought he became invincible. And great shape. But what beat him out in Africa wasn't Ali. He didn't beat him down. It was just his lack of respect. That's why I say if he has that same dedication and realize that, okay, but I can either beat this guy for 12 rounds, try to beat him, which what he did try to do, but now realize it's 119 degrees over here in Zaire, and that energy. And Ali mind realized that he could not move all night with George, but he also knew he couldn't stay on the ropes and take a beating for 12 rounds. But he knew in his mind eventually, the young George wants a knockout. And if I can just absorb this for a while, he'll wear down. And that's exactly what happened. That's why I say the same knowledge. That if he uses that same dedication that he pushed into in the 70s and the 90s, I think he stayed there for a long time.
Well, we'll talk about what would have happened a little later in the podcast about if there had been a rematch, which I think is a really interesting concept.
I'll tell you about that. Okay.
Let's. There's so many questions about if Foreman would have won against so. How do you think? You mentioned Tyson a lot though, as a possible exception. It sounds like you're saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth. How do you think he would have done? Would it have been, let's say they fought 100 times. How many times would Tyson win? How many times would George win? Do you think?
Probably 60-40, or maybe 75-25 George, because I don't think Tyson showed that he was not good at handling adversity in the ring. And that's the one thing George could handle was adversity.
Well, he could adjust too. He could stay the path when he needed to, and he could adjust when he needed to.
He could adjust. And when it came to that, Tyson was going to come one way, no doubt. Here. But once George figured that out, and the strength, George was so strong. This is what people, yes, they do, because they saw him pulling those tractors and lifting cows. He was so strong.
Who lifts a cow? Who just lived he didn't practice it either, right? It was like spur of the moment. Let me just lift this cow.
Sports Illustrated was doing a shoot one day, and I think we were getting ready for the second Frazier fight. I think it was the second, or maybe the Norton fight or something. Hey, guys kept telling me, George said, I'll show you strength. He grabs this thing, man, and picks up on it. And I'm like, you're going to kill yourself or the cow's going to kick you. But he didn't. He grabbed that thing, put it on the shoulder. I'm like, that's monstrous. But his strength, you have to beat him and the strength and the power. That was the difficulty in fighting him. That's why I give Holyfield all the credit in the world, because George never really pulled out his full power against him. Never tried. There's only one fight George had that I've seen him that he really pulled his full power on the comeback. Only one fight, and that was the Cooney fight.
Okay. What about? I have one question about Moore, because it was like I could come up with a bunch of different reasons, but I'm not entirely sure. So we'll see if you know. Foreman on his comeback used a cross guard. For like every single fight he uses it, except when he retakes the championship against Moore. And I had a lot of reasons that I gave. I did a breakdown of the fight on my And
I seen that, by the way. Great job on it, though.
Oh, well, thank you.
But I'll straighten it out for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I gave like guesses in the breakdown because I wasn't entirely sure. I figured it might be because he was southpaw or because he was looking to be more aggressive, so he wanted his hands free. But there's a bunch of technical reasons, but I wasn't sure exactly why he abandoned the cross guard then.
George knew he had Teddy Atlas in the corner with him, right? And you got to know, sometimes more than your fighter, you have to know the other guy that's your adversary from Angelo and Charlie that was across from him. So you have to know that guy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that Teddy had studied and trained that thing, because during his time, Archie fought Jose Torres, and Jose Torres was also trained by Castillo Amato, right?
Yeah.
So and that's pretty much where that cross arm came from, watching Archie. And it was a thing where most fighters, it's a surprise to them, and most corners, it's a surprise to them. But it wasn't a surprise to Teddy Atlas.
Oh, okay.
Teddy, he knew. He said, I got to change this thing. So what happened was, we were kind of lucky we had a great group of training guys with us when George started his comeback, because George pretty much financed his early part of his comeback himself, which most fighters, don't do. But, he had a few dollars to still do that because he wanted guys. But we had a young man named Matthew Brooks, who was a light heavyweight contender, good journeyman. Once, you know how that goes, lose some, win some, lose a bunch, win some. But he was a good journeyman guy with us.
Yeah.
But he was a southpaw.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew was with us the whole term of our comeback.
Okay.
So George was working against a southpaw every day in the gym. This was no surprise. I think we talked about two guys that may have been southpaws from a fighting standpoint. Mm-hmm. But we had one every day in the gym. So it was nothing surprising. And when Michael Moore, everybody kept saying, oh, southpaw. I'm like, man, that's not going to get us. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But George has said before, he says, so when the first round comes out, I watched George do this. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I'm like, but kind of like what you're saying, David, is he going to open up on this kid? Because we kind of knew halfway that Michael didn't have the best chin. Now, I'll preface this with this. I knew Michael Moore in the amateurs, right? Michael Moore was a middleweight in the amateurs.
Oh.
A good middleweight in the oh yeah, and what they call a super middleweight. But
he went way up then.
Yeah, and I had traveled with him a few times. We fought the Moscow team, the Russian teams, and man, Mike was the one guy. If we had to fight a tournament against the guys and it was 5-5, and you needed that sixth fight to win the trophy, Michael Moore was going to get it for you.
Really?
So I had watched him, but I also knew that he had a little weakness. So he tended to get caught because he lagged in fights. And
okay.
Yeah. And so as you went on, that's why you watched the Holyfield fight. He gets clipped in, and in that fight, I think in the Burt Cooper fight. But he tends to lax a little bit. But George had always said, he said these things to Archie, to all of us before we left the dressing room. He says, listen, I've watched this kid. I don't need to scream him from the corner. I know everything he's going to do. So we just figured, okay, George, good speech, right? When you get out there, you're going to clean this guy's clock. But he knew he had to make Michael Moore courageous because he knew that if he hit him with a shot in the first round, it wasn't happening no more. You know what I mean? He's going to kill this fight. He's going to move around. And he did that for so long, and he was successful at it. But in the 8th round, George lands a couple of body shots. A lot of people didn't pick that up. I think you did. He hit him with that shot, man, that boy arms. And it basically froze. George really could have got him in that 8th round. I don't know why he didn't. But I call it catfish shot. Get shot because when you go, when you get the catfish, the first thing you do, you gut them, right? You hit them right in the middle with that hook.
Yeah.
That's how you gut them, right? And I'm like, catfish. That's it. That's the shot. So when he did, it kind of froze. But when he comes back for the 9th round, George still didn't go after him. But by this time, Michael, his legs were gone. He couldn't move anymore. And so, and just like George said, he says, I'll get him. He says, he's going to do everything he can. But he said, I'm going to get him. So when I saw that 10th round, I told Archie, it was Angelo, I'm sorry. I said, he got him. Angelo said, you're right. And here he comes in, 2 minutes, and I forget exactly what it was into the fight. But the minute I seen George hit him with the first shot, and the kid just froze. He didn't move. It's like George said, okay, you want to stand there? And the but his legs were gone. So the next thing to do, he just came across and hit him with the same shot. Just a perfectly placed punch right on the chin. And I remember him like, that was his problem then.
Yeah, no, it was so accurate. It was right on the tip of the jaw. Turned his head
right. Yeah, man. Yeah, right on.
People forget they're like, that doesn't look like a hard shot, is what they say. Is like, well, if his head turns basically around like an owl,
it's a hard shot.
It's a hard shot. You're right about the body shots too. I'd rather get nailed in the head than get hit. I've had bruised ribs twice. Never from sparring or from a real fight. Always from just like running drills or training. And the second time it happened, I knew right away that I would have bruised ribs, and it would just hurt for the next 3 weeks. So if I could pick up on that, I know professional fighters can take a shot to the body and be like, okay, that's going to hurt for the next 2 months or so. Exactly. It's demoralizing.
I remember George telling me in his first career, I was in high school, but then in college, through his early part. But I was always, whenever I got a break, I would go to his fights and stuff. And we sit around and watch and talk about fights sometimes. And, he told me one time, he said, listen, a guy would rather for you to hit him on the chin than to hit him in his body. He said, because, man, body shots just take it all out of, I'm at that time, I'm like, I guess so, but I don't know. But after learning the sport, I started realizing, because there used to be a thing about the great Hispanic fighters. All of those guys, man.
Body head. Yeah.
Oh, body head, And by that time, it was like, man, please hit me here. Don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they'll just carry their hand low. That's a good tactic to use. So let's talk a little bit about the insanity that was the heavyweight division back when your brother was taking the championship, where you had not just great, the three great fighters, your brother and Ali and Frazier, but also guys like Norton or guys who just like Chevello, who had the craziest chin of all time to where you just couldn't knock him down. Let's talk about a few of those fights, the best of the best. I thought we'd start with Ali versus Frazier, and just kind of give our perspectives on that. For me, Ali versus Frazier, the first fight, well, actually all three fights to this point, is one of the craziest clashes of styles that we will ever see. It's weird to think of two boxers that are more different. Ali with his lean back style and his lightning fast jab and his footwork, and Frazier with his low line head movement, coming in with that insane left hook with an arm that actually wouldn't straighten on.
Smoking. He called it smoking.
Yeah. It's just insanity. Just probably the greatest fight, not just in boxing, but in the world. I think a lot of people would argue that. Definitely one of them, unless you want, the third fight. You could pick anyone from there.
Well, this is the thing, David. To make a fight like that, it took several things to get to that level, okay? And coming out of the late 60s and the problems that took place in this country, the separatism, racism, segregation that you had, that fight was more of a buildup. That was a culture. That was perhaps, and I said this about two fights only that I can think of. That was the first cultural fight that we ever had in the United States. And by that, I mean, okay, Ali had been in the military. Everybody know him been in the military. Been drafted, had won the title, turned to Islam, giving up, never really losing the title, but giving it up. America was divided to a point where you had the people, the black people, and white America, who wanted to wave the flag because Ali said he didn't want to go and fight, right? So And everybody, well, Joe Louis did it back in the 30s, and he didn't fight. He was just it was a thing to give, up for the troops to feel good about themselves. Take back, the champ came over here and did all of, but Ali didn't want to go over there at all. Right?
Well, he probably saw what they did to Louis. Yeah, you know that story, right? How they, maybe you know it better than I do.
I knew Joe Louis, but that story, it wasn't. No, that's not really that. That honestly, that really wasn't the issue.
I'm sure Ali wasn't worried about the IRS, taking all that, screwing him over on taxes and everything like that. For those who don't know, what happened to Louis was that he gave away his money from his fights to the U.S. government to help with the war effort. And then the government said, yeah, you gave it all away to us, but you still owe taxes on the fights.
Well,
after he donated it to them.
Taxes then was 75%.
Yeah.
Basically what happened.
That's crazy.
And Joe didn't have a tax thing, but and you can't make that up. But one day we'll talk about the Joe Louis story.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to tell you that whole story, and because I got to know Mr. Louis in the years, and he became a very great advisor to George.
We'll save it for another podcast then.
Yeah, and our family. So I like to tell you about that story. But that was the first cultural fight. So when I say that, in order to have that fight like it was, you had to have two guys that were actually pretty much mad at each other.
Because they were mad at each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Frazier kind of resented the fact, you had white America pulling for Joe. Mm-hmm. Joe's a Southern boy from Columbia, from South Carolina. He wasn't from Philly at the time, of course, originally with the South Carolina background. And Ali from the South as well, from Kentucky. But but Ali seemed to have been the anti everything Joe Louis was. Mm. So, but I'm sorry that Joe Frazier was. But what happened was Joe resented the fact that Black Americans took up more with Ali. Mm-hmm. Where it seemed like white America took up with Joe because Joe, was the way he was that whole thing about, I'm proud to be here in America and this is American and we're supposed to do this and I only believe there's only one religion. So you had these guys were fighting on two. So it took that to make this into a great fight. So when they finally got in the ring, here was two guys that truly did not like each other.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. So in Ali's case, he saw this as, what's the word I'm looking for? Redemption.
Yeah.
Whereas Joe Frazier says, I'm going to shut that mouth of yours up. That was literally what he was saying. That was said. I'm going to shut that, I'm going to shut that. And he did. He broke his jaw. But it took that fight. It took that to, you have to have that. You got to have a good guy and a bad guy. And that may have been one of the first, since Max Schmeling and Joe Louis, that may have been one of the first good guy, bad guy fights.
Depending on which side you were on, yeah.
Yeah, you had to pick a side. Mm-hmm. You had to pick a side, okay? And then, in the second fight, it was there, but George had just destroyed Joe.
Yeah.
So people kind of figure like, well, it was still big. But then Ali beats George would make the third fight even bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Because now Ali has the title back. And there, Joe is saying, I'm going to take it back from you again. So you had that same energy level again. We're not liking each other. And Joe Frazier, because Ali used to say things about Joe that was kind of, not very kind. Like, he said, he called Joe an Uncle Tom, right?
Yeah.
And for those who may not consider that, know what it is, but, it was a thing as a disparaging remark amongst Black people, but it really wasn't. But this is the thing about it. And I haven't told this to many people because when people tell you things, everybody's dead now, so you can kind of pass things on, right? So nobody's dead. Yeah. But he called him an Uncle Tom, and Joe Frazier didn't understand exactly what he had said. And they said, Joe, why are you so missing? No, because he said, look, I don't go around peeping in nobody's window. He thought he called him a peeping Tom.
Oh.
Right. That's right.
So he wasn't actually mad about it until someone explained it to him.
Someone explained it to him. That's
okay.
where the whole thing came into. Right. So I'm saying you had to have. That was the greatest trilogy in sports.
There was very little caution. Caution with both fighters threw. The second fight which is honestly my favorite.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't even like watching it. I think the camera angles are terrible. Like a lot of times you could only see the back of one fighter. It's
Yeah, you
pointed
don't see,
directly
they
at
only
them.
showed you the back of the fight, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got the side view, but most
And
of you right.
and it's insane. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as there's the correct level of skill and talent, and then just and they employ it all because they just hate each other.
Yes.
And obviously their relationship was very complicated. But when you could say what you want to about how it ended. There's a lot of thoughts on either side from that. But when they were in the ring, it was just full on. They were. It wasn't showing off. They were using the complexity of their skills to absolutely damage the other person.
Yes.
As much as they could.
Joe wanted to leave when Joe knocked him down. See, when he locked him down in the first round, when the first fight, that was like, hey, I've done something that I done because I don't think that won the fight for Joe. I really thought Joe had the fight going to the 12th round anyway. Mm-hmm. But if there ever was a signature, that did it because then the referees is the one that scored the fight. 7-5, I think he wound up in. So, but I think that when Joe did that, even though he had the swollen face, the swollen eyes, and everything else, man, it was well worth it to hear, the winner and still the unified heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Frazier. And getting to know both guys, I do know then that was just Joe couldn't take him. But Ali was the biggest jokester. And that's what later on, people kind of discovered that Ali didn't mean anything by it, man. The guy was just a joke. He was the greatest hype man ever.
Yeah, he was selling fights.
Oh, he was selling fights. And you got to remember back then, we didn't have the luxury of pushing a button, saying $89 to watch a television or 90, whatever they charge these days. You had to literally get dressed up, go out in the cold, go to an arena, and watch the fight.
Yeah.
See, so you had to really, to make people come out, you had to do that. And it took that type of energy from guys like Joe and Muhammad and even George and Norton during that period of time when closed circuit pay-per-view, I think of what it was called, closed circuit pay-per-view then. So it took, you needed that. You had to have that. And without that, I'll be honest with you, I think that kind of reinvigorated the sport of boxing.
Yeah. I was just going to say.
And even to this day, yeah. And even now to this day, I think it still exists. That's why people can still talk about, that the fight, as they called it. Then you the Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila. Oh, man, just classics.
When it's two ideals, like you said, when the fighters kind of personify an idea that with such high contrast and everything. Sometimes it could be good, sometimes it could be bad.
Yeah. But believe me, during that period of time, I was a young kid, but during that period of time, everybody in our neighborhood, man, it was like, man, the fight's coming. Nobody had money to go see it during that time. This was the early 70, 71, I think it was 71. But it's one of those fights that till the day, everybody saw it the first time. You know what I mean? Like 300 million people seen the fight when probably only 2 million seen it, but 300 million people say, yeah, I remember that fight. Nah, I don't think so. But that's the kind of fight that it was. But it was because it was a cultural fight.
Right.
And we haven't had many of those since, because things have gotten better in the sporting world. Let's put it like that over the years.
Yeah, I still get plenty of YouTube comments. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who still think of who just pick someone who's the same race as them, and then they want to see their race, dominant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Joe Frazier and Ali called him that a couple of times. You the white man's boy. Well, hey, man, come on.
he knew how to piss people off.
Yes, he did.
It was a talent, and usually it would fluster people so bad that they lost a lot of their form. It was like a mental tactic. But for Frazier, man, it backfired.
Joe kept
horribly
it.
That first fight, for sure.
Joe kept it. I've never seen a guy, and I've watched a lot of fights, like you have, but a lot of fights. Never seen a guy with that intensity before since that time in a fight. Never. I don't care. Tyson, they can talk about the Tysons, even the Georges, and with the power that they possess. No one with that intensity that they had. Joe Frazier had one gear. That was it.
Yeah, he kept his head and kind of channeled that anger though. Like he never just started swinging. He set up everything. We were talking about body shots before. Something I never noticed that was crazy, and I was doing research on the fight, is that I guess Ali had trouble walking for like a week after the fight because Frazier would target his hips the same way with his, just bam, just right in there, the same way that a Muay Thai guy targets someone's legs.
Well, you got to realize the problem that boxers always made. See, and Archie Moore told me this, and he said that after 1960s, when television came in, it kind of glamorized the sport of boxing more, and people fell in love with the knockout. They didn't want to see the actual, prior to days, Marciano was a knockout artist, but guys like Jersey Joe Walcott, Ezra Charles, guys like Archie Moore, Sandy Saddler, Sugar Ray, they stayed on their toes and boxed. They wore a guy down. That was the art. But then television come in, you want to see knockouts. So now you got the heavyweights coming to the game and the skills, and that's what made Ali, because the skills of the heavyweights were like knockouts. Floyd Patterson knocked out people, or people knocked him out. But Floyd Patterson knocked out. Then Sonny Liston came on. He was the knockout guy. The feared puncher. So, and people liked that. They hated him, but they liked him. To call the guy killer, blah, blah, blah. But those were the things. And Archie said television kind of destroyed the art of the sport. Because people wanted no longer, and then until Ali came along, of course, the fluid heavyweight, the flashing guy.
That's funny. That's funny. Archie Moore said that because he's the guy with the most established knockouts in history.
Yes,
and even he was lamenting that everyone was just going for a fast KO.
Yeah, but Archie got a lot of guys. He got laid on in the round, So because he liked to wear guys down. He was an artist, man. He was an artist.
So you're saying that Ali actually took advantage of people's tendency to just always look for a knockout in order to get a name for themselves and use that against them.
Yeah.
And then
and
he kind of counteracted that with the smack talk, because I don't think if Ali, talked as much as he talked, I don't think he would have been as popular, considering that he wasn't a knockout artist. If you know what I mean.
No, he wouldn't have been, because if you met Ali, he was not a fierce-looking guy. There was no muscles. George and Liston had the big arms, the big chest, the big muscles, Norton, those guys. Ali was he looked ordinary in the suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't see him and fear him.
Yeah, you didn't think immediately that guy's gonna kick everybody's.
Tyson, you look at Tyson, like, oh my God, that guy can kill you. But they didn't have that with him.
I was watching Tyson's podcast the other day, and then he made what everyone thought was a joke. And then everyone laughed, and then he just goes, "I'm serious," and everyone just stops laughing. This is pretty funny.
But Ali made guys like that look. There was a guy, I'm telling you, there was guys like Mildenberger, and they were fighting. They were good fighters. Zora Foley, during in those period of times. Mac Foster, big, strong, punching-looking guy. You saw him, but Ali made them look, because they were slow heavyweights. They had the punching power. They hit you, but they were slower heavyweights. So he had the ability to boom, boom, get out of the way. And everybody thought now, I'm going to be the one to change that. But he's like, no, because in his mind, Brundini told me one time, Drew Brundini, he said, man, Muhammad is scared to death in that ring. And you got a guy that goes in the ring like that, you're not going to land a punch on him like that, I guarantee. And that's because he knew that the idea was not to get hit. He had the best recruitative power, other than Holyfield, probably anybody ever seen. But Ali, that was his biggest banner was his fact that he fought in fear of being hurt in the ring. And like I said, Angelo and I talked over the years with all those guys, And so as a tidbit, as a kid, you start listening to things, you don't pay much attention. All of a sudden, you're an adult, and you're working in this, and you start realize all the things those guys said to you. Then it kind of comes back, and you realize that was true.
That's a very good point about Ali, because one thing I've noticed is that when he does land a knockout, it's not how hard he hits; it's because it's just accurate. So Ali only took a shot when there was no fear of retaliation. He had the cleanest shot that was possible. He wasn't going to get countered right after it. And so he didn't need much power. It was just like we were talking about before.
That was a look on his face. He was like, "Oh, there it is," and he landed. He threw it every time. That was like, "That is," because with George, he had no intention of going toe to toe with George. But by the time it got around to, and if you were, I'll wait until you cover that. But I mean, but the whole idea, but just with Frazier, he never had those opportunities.
Let's talk about Frazier versus George first. One of the most dominant,
excellent breakdown you did
performances.
Yeah, but you perfect breakdown.
Man, you're gonna make me blush. You gotta stop with that.
That made me a fan of yours, though. It really did. That made me. I talked to my brother. We sitting at the ranch at the horses about a couple of months back. I was riding horses, and I brought it up to him. I pulled it for him to take a look at. But that made me a fan a few months back. But that made me a fan of yours, David.
Oh, George saw it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I had to pull it up for him because I told him how you described the grappling, the MMA stuff. He said, "Man, if they had MMA around, I could have been king back there because I wanted to kill somebody." I said, "Yeah, I know."
that was one of the questions, and I made another video about boxers that could have been great mixed martial artists. Like who knows about jiu-jitsu or whatever, but as far as wrestling goes, they employed it a lot. Your brother used so much wrestling. Could you kind of, and this will kind of lead into the Frazier fight too, because this is mostly how he dominated Frazier. I feel was through wrestling. How did he, as a boxer, learn all those wrestling tricks?
Well, Dick Sadler, George had Sandy Sadler, Dick Sadler, Archie Moore, Joe Louis, at times Ray Robinson. When you got that many different guys that around you, and they like being around you on top of that, wasn't just always about paying guys, but at the same time, it's a business. But when you got guys around like that, everybody puts a little bit into your mind. So as and when you're in training, you start seeing what you can do. So what happened was we had a guy there was a fighter named Scrap Iron Johnson from LA. Scrap Iron was the trial horse back then for every fighter. Ali, Frazier, you name him, he was the trial horse. He was a lot like Joe Frazier. You could hit the guy with some of everything, and he kept coming. Never stopped coming, right? So you really had to put some juice on him, if you know what I mean, to make him stop. George was one of those guys, but he had the style of being inside close on you.
Yeah.
So you had to be able to take him, grab him, and spin it. They taught George how to use his arms. Sonny Liston was good at using his arms as well. You got to remember, I forgot to mention Liston because George had been in training camp with Liston for those years.
Yeah.
But Liston taught about using his arms. He says a lot of times, guys want to meet you here. So what you have to do is you got to get them before they meet you there. So how do you do that? You lock into their arms. You lock in. You take them, you here, and you spin them, and you turn. If you notice with the Frazier fight, boom, 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 bam, back with the jab again, right?
Yeah.
So but you have to fight guys like that over the time prior to you getting to where you want. A lot of fighters make the mistake when you decide, okay, I'm a contender, right? And you say, who's the heavyweight champion of the world? And we'll use Joe Frazier was at that time. Well, it didn't make sense to fight boxers. Because why? Joe Frazier wasn't going to box you on your toes and move around. Yeah. So you find guys like Stanford Harris, Scrap Iron Johnson. There's another guy, Levi Forte, which was the first guy. I think Levi may have been the first guy to go 8 rounds with George. I can't remember that, but he's one of the first guys. All these guys were like 5'10", 5'11" guys who came in here like this, right? So what happens is you get to the point you learn how to. It was called grappling. And basically, that's what you were doing. You get them, you lock their arms in them, you turn it, you do the directing of and that was the style that Joe Frazier had. So Dick and those guys knew then that hey, there's no sense in fighting a guy that's a boxer because that's not what you want. You want a guy that you know is going to come after you, and you find 4, 5, or 6 guys, and there were a lot of those guys in those days. Ernie Shavers was one of those guys, but Shavers didn't. He wasn't. He was trying to be a major contender, but at this time you're looking for contenders. I mean, for but the trial horses are like a journeyman.
Journeyman.
Guys is going to give you. You might beat them. You may even knock them out. But they're going to give you what you're looking for and give you a chance to work on the art that you need to make that to be successful. And that's why in the Frazier fight, he was able to do just that. Everything Joe tried here. Shots. George, I'm not going to land with that way. Bop, nope, not going to do that because you know that Joe's best shot was the left hook. Whatever he threw, he was looking to throw the left hook. Mm. Regardless, whatever he threw, you knew the next level. And that thing swoops over your head. So what do? You block it here, make him throw it because here it comes. So what do? You whoop, you block it, or you take him and you push him, you spin him out the way, and then and he's in position for your punch.
It's pretty brilliant, but Frazier had such a low center of balance, and George fought so upright that it was just like the easiest thing in the world for him to just step offline and turn him, especially with his strength and everything.
But Archie had said that was the one punch that Archie always wanted George to land with Joe Frazier was right here on top of his head.
Oh, really?
He said when you hit that, he said that's Archie said this is where everything is right here. Everything. That's why people, they laugh about the shot that George hits Joe and Joe goes up off the ground. I think and then there's a shot where George comes with an uppercut and he lifts Joe up off the ground. A terrific power shot.
Yeah.
But what happened was when Joe was trying to get out of the way, because his mind basically had been scrambled from those shots here and on the side of the head. So when he comes up that way, he was like in perfect range for Joe. Like, whoa. And, right hand, bam. From that point, he never was the same anymore. Joe had no idea. I would really believe that after this third knockdown, when he goes to that corner, Joe had no idea where he was.
It was insane the amount of times he got up. Like modern day, that fight would have been stopped in the first. Yeah, like no question. Frazier getting up over and over again is one of the most inspirational, ill-advised, but inspirational things. Inspirational things I've ever seen. It's just inhuman.
The business of it, David, was George wasn't supposed to win. See, that's the business of it. And everybody has said, okay, Joe Frazier always a cold starter. Even Cosell said it in his broadcast. Joe Frazier always a slow starter. So everybody looked forward to the rematch between Ali and George. Between Ali and Frazier. That's what everybody was looking. This was a 23-year-old kid that, strong, big, tough, but he's not going to beat Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier just beat Ali, but we'll let him make a little money. He's the number one contender, but still it doesn't matter. So George wasn't supposed to beat it. The fight wasn't supposed to be anything more than a tune-up for Joe Frazier.
Yeah.
So that's why believe me, that's the reason that they kept letting Joe get up to 6'10". Could have got him killed.
They figured it was a fluke maybe, that he caught him with a lucky shot.
George was supposed to wear down because at that time he had a history of not being able to go past 6 or 7 rounds without getting tired. But people forget about George's fights with Gregorio Peralta, where both of those fights went 12 rounds, and George was tired as hell at the end of it. Don't get me wrong, but he went 12 rounds. And Levi Forte fight went 8 rounds. He had some others that had gone. He stopped him in 6 rounds. I think he stopped Peralta the second time. But so it wasn't that he couldn't go to 12 rounds. He always said, well, I'm going to go 12 when I can do 2. That just didn't make sense.
It makes more sense to get him out, like, regardless of cardio, it makes sense to get Frazier out early. So, because the more he throws that hook, the more chances he has to throw that hook. Yeah.
He warms up.
So was it you said shot to the top of the head, which a lot, like, I've always heard to just avoid that shot because you could hurt your head, you could hurt your hand. It's a hard part. You're saying top of the head actually kind of gives like a jolt and wears the person down over time. Was that the jab that Foreman kept landing?
It was more or less because Joe dropped his head all the time. Like you just said, he dropped his head. So when he dropped his head, you said, bam, right on top. Keep dropping it, that's what
that's the only thing that was open during Frazier Ali. Ali had to work like hell to get jabs and hooks and like he angled his punches in such weird ways to just get through that little gap in Frazier's guard.
Little bit of stuff.
And then Foreman was like, I don't need a gap. I'm just going to hit the hard part of his head.
Whatever you give me, I'll take it. And George was such a powerful guy that he could hit you basically on your glove and still hurt you, like he did Norton. He could hit you on the glove and it's still on your arm and still hurt you. Punch yourself sometimes. The punches were so hard.
That's crazy. Like Marciano, who used to just hit the shoulders
like Rocky
until
Marciano.
He couldn't. Yeah.
Same way. Joe Lewis and Marciano will hit you on the arm. See, you get to the point you want to cup. He's okay. remember, this is legal. It's not like it's illegal to hit you on the arms and elbows.
No.
And after a while, man, that's why I mean, your body becomes open, or this becomes open. And you get to the point, okay, man, I just give up.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
All right, that is fascinating. Thank you for that bit of information. I had no idea about that. Next, we get to the big event, and the big event that never happened, which is Ali versus George, and what would have happened in the rematch. Could you? I want to spend some time on this. Could you tell us a little bit about George's thoughts leading up to the fight? What was going up, through his head in the fight? How he prepared? But anything you could tell us about it. It really is one of the most monumental fights.
By this time, we're living in California. I'm in college, but we're living in California now. And George had, like I said, won the title. He's on the Carson show. Okay, so Joe Roman fight comes up. Tokyo, Japan. We're going to give him $1 million to fight Joe Roman. Thank you. That's an easy million. Boom. Next comes Norton, though. Norton had just beaten Ali. And so it was a thing where, boy, I don't know about this Ken Norton, because remember, Norton, Archie had worked with Norton a little while too. So
yeah.
Norton kind of had that
the cross guard,
defense. But this is the thing I tell, and you have to have to throw certain punches. You have to have courage to throw that punch. What I mean is, your best punch might be a right hand, and a guy may be susceptible to that. But if that guy is capable of countering anything you do, when you throw, you better have the confidence in that right hand when you throw it, that you're going to hit him with it just enough where he can't come back and hit you with anything. Well, in the Norton fight, Norton came in same way. If you notice, there was a little gap right in between there with Norton. And George threw that right hand right underneath and caught him. And Norton, that was it. So, but to get to that point, the reason being, George had no fear. And a Norton fight just took out, if there was any kind of fear that anybody could beat him, he just walked through Ken Norton, man. But Norton lost that fight before they ever got in the ring. And you'll see that in some guys' eyes. Because I don't know if they wrote about this, but Norton was seeing a hypnotist, right? He had to go see this hypnotist. Yeah, he was seeing a hypnotist.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So, and because that comment was after, well, the hypnotist should have told Norton that the fight was coming up because evidently he was still asleep. But he had this thing where, whether it was true or not, I say this, but that was really the thing that was going, he saw a hypnotist. I think he believed in that. Somebody told me once that they think back there in the 70s, horoscopes were big. Guys were wearing the chains with the whatever sign is you wear and all that kind of crap. So everybody was wearing that stuff. So it's like, your sign is in Leo, whatever that means. And, May is a good time for you. So everything you do in May is going to work.
Okay, so he believed in astrology then.
Yeah, that's what I heard now.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about March, February, June, and other months that you fight in? It may not be your time. So George they're supposed that was Norton. And it worked. Hey, whatever worked, right? He beat Ali and supposedly broke Ali's jaw, dislocated his jaw and all those things. So the Norton fight was probably, I thought would be a great test. Personally, I thought it'd be a great test for him. But it wasn't. I mean, George just walked through him. I mean, he just walked. But in my mind, and then in this as a young athlete yourself, the worst thing you can start to do is start thinking that you're invincible and believe in your own press clippings.
Oh, I don't compete.
Yeah.
But a lot of the viewers listening right now, this will definitely help. So listen to this.
Don't believe your press clippings. When they start telling you how great you are, you got a problem, because then, unless you're the 98 Bulls, then everybody believes that. But I mean, but I mean, that becomes a problem with athletes. George had a divorce he was going through at this time also as well. His first wife, Adrian Calhoun from Minneapolis. He had just had his first daughter in 1973. Life was great. Life was great. And it was just, you're winning fights, you're making money, you're doing a movie here, you're appearing on television. You are the man. Ali was 32. Now, that's funny, we should say that now, but Ali was 32 years old. You were 24 years old. You knocked out everything. You like you say, you're picking up cows, you're pulling tractors and trailers, you're moving bales of hay, it's everything, man. You're the King Kong of your day. You're the King Kong of your day. But then there's a Godzilla somewhere waiting on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it was. So the training aspect of it, George trained hard. He always trained hard. And I tell everybody, never underestimate this training. Never did. Focus is a different thing. I mentioned focus earlier in the broadcast. Focus is one thing. You can train hard to be in the shape, but you got to focus on what your job is. Mm. And I just don't think that he focused on what his job was to retain your title. And if it would have been, you would have realized that I am the champion. I'm not the challenger. I don't have to go in and challenge you like I want to. I can stand. George was a good boxer, man. Actually, the knockout, after discovering the knockout was probably horrible. You know what I mean? The knockout power, but it's so ABC wanted it and everybody wanted the knockout. So that's fine too. Mm. But George could have boxed Ali and done well in that fight. I really do. I think he could have, and probably that would have been the difference later on if he had that fight going into the rounds. I think he would have had a better chance of boxing against Ali early, because Ali was trying to box and move, but he realized the way George was cutting out the ring. Okay, and he said that in the book, The Fight. He even said it afterwards. We had conversations afterwards, and he said, man, I knew I couldn't box. He said, George, Archie had taught him everything about cutting the ring off. Here, you move, you taking 5 steps, George taking 1. Then George is there. So, but it didn't matter, because when George got there, he wasn't going to try to do the setup. He just wanted to throw the knockout. And that's what happened. So the idea is that, this still goes today. You plan your work and you work your plan. If you get away from what you've worked on, it's not going to work. And that's what happened in Africa. But, when they got over there, 4 o'clock in the morning, the fight probably, if somebody said, well, the fight should have taken place in Madison Square Garden, and maybe, things don't happen. A lot of things, George gets cut, mentality starts coming into play. You start second guessing yourself, but you still figure like, I'm going to knock this guy out. It doesn't matter. The cut became a major concern. You didn't want the fight, the cut to be the reason the fight was stopped. So, but sometimes at the end of the day, it was Ali, and you just say, hey, I lost to Ali, and that's we just leave it there. A lot of things went on. The water things, the George talked about putting the water. Dick Sadler, I don't know, they wrote about it. He said, they put some water in my medicine, in my water. But this is the thing about it. I think a lot of people didn't pay this much attention. The reason the rematch didn't take place is because they wanted Dick Sadler. George fired Dick Sadler after that fight. 2 reasons the fight didn't take place in rematch. They told George, we'll only give you a rematch if you put Dick Sadler back in your corner. George said, no, that's not happening. But believe me, by that time, I started working for my brother. Everywhere I would see them guys somewhere, I said, hey, man, what about the rematch? We had a lot of them. That was 8, 10 back then. $5 million was a lot of money, but that was almost 8, 10 million bucks for George and Ali in a rematch. But they didn't want that. What's the name? One of the guys told me, say, hey, man, old saying that when you escape the bear one time, you don't get back in his grips a second time. And that's just the way it was. It wasn't going to happen. And so it was a thing that George wanted. He chased him around, and then, prior to that. But after that, it was like, okay, this guy's not going to fight me. A lot of people don't know this, of course, but the WBC had told Ali that if George beat Jimmy Young, he was going to be forced to fight George again, or they were going to strip him.
So we were one fight away.
One fight away.
Oh man!
Either that or Ali was going to give up the title, one or the other.
Yeah,
so that's what was going to happen. Yeah,
I'm sure Ali would have fought him a second time. I doubt he wanted to, because
No, I don't blame him. Ali took a beating. He won that fight, but he lost that war. He was never the same after that fight anymore. He took a beating in that fight. And just body shots. Those body shots hurt him. They show shots and occasional shots here. People look like it. Shots not landing, but hey, man, those things were hurting. And he was just willing to sit back and let George pound on him.
He was turning aside a lot of the. I mean, a lot got through, but he was turning aside most of the headshots. But he was just letting the body.
The headshots were going, but that was the hit. Yeah, because George, but the body shots, man.
They were all landing almost
down the body.
Yeah, Ali just made a decision, I think, like, I don't care how much damage I take. I'm going to stay conscious, and to stay conscious, I protect my head, and just let him unload.
And if you read the book, The Fight by Norman Mailer, he said that George hit him with a shot. I think it was in the second round, right? Third round. He said it took him back to being in his closet. He said, you go in a closet, it's real dark. When you shut the doors, he said, man, it was like just pitch black dark. He said, but then all of a sudden I saw a little light, and then he realized this is what I got to do. Because Angelo Dundee had hollered out from the corner, don't play with that sucker.
Yeah.
Don't play with that sucker, And I used to, yep.
Not a good idea. I think I'm not sure if Ali actually came. Like, no one's sure. Only Ali's sure, or was, when he came up with the strategy of laying on the ropes, the rope-a-dope. But it sure seems like he was. Knows. It sure seems like he was planning on boxing him at first.
Yeah.
And then George was good enough to just get one or two big ones through, and that's really. But Ali might have just realized right then it's only going to take one or two.
Yeah.
Four of those.
Yeah.
If I try to box,
it's only going to take a couple of those, and if I do it now, I don't last, and if I wait till later on, because the sprint is sometimes the last thing to go, but it may come slower. But if it lands, it still hurts the same. So, but I mean, that's what made Ali what he was, David. The guy could adapt better than anybody you ever seen in the ring that I know that I've seen. I didn't see, I saw films of Joe Louis. I've seen films of other guys, but I'd never seen this. The way he could adapt was just amazing.
Yeah, most people can adjust between fights, if at all. Ali could just come up with another idea
during the fight,
midway. Yeah, and then Foreman could too later on.
George later on, but all of those things, it was a learning process. George never really, he started boxing in '67. He won the Olympics in '68. He turned pro in '69. Basically, his first 3 or 4 years of boxing should have been learning. But he was in his fourth year, I think it was fourth year, fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. So
came up so fast.
Insane. Fast. So I mean, when you look at that point, and then of course, like I said, by the '77, which would have been 9 years into the game, you would have seen him. Maybe Muhammad is starting to fade more, and other guys are coming. Shavers, Corey was still, those guys were still around, but and that was a great period of heavyweights from 1968 to 1977, man. That was the greatest period of heavyweights ever, I think. But then Larry Holmes started to make the move up. There were some others that were coming up. Cooney was coming up the level. Dwayne Bobbitt, even though he never really made it, because when he got his major fight was Norton, he got knocked out. But there were some guys, Mike Weaver, John Tate, and I don't want to say also Rans, good fighters, but not of the level that they attracted the types of people that Frazier, George, Ali, Norton, and then Larry later on in his career. Good fighters, but just not, they weren't attention-grabbing fighters, I should say. That's why I think Sugar Ray Leonard became such a great big household name, because there was no great heavyweights to keep that up during that time.
Yeah. Well, we finally have an era of exciting competitive heavyweight fighters, which is what we're going to talk about next. So now that we've gone over the best era in heavyweight boxing, let's go over the new era, which hopefully proves to be as exciting, if that's even possible. Talking about the top three guys at this point: Fury, Wilder, and Joshua. No one's fought Joshua yet, so that remains to be determined. Fury and Wilder obviously have fought twice. Let's go over our thoughts on their styles, how they match up, the first two fights so far, and any potential encounters that either Fury or Wilder will have with Joshua. All right, so let's talk about Tyson Fury first, if you don't mind.
The style of Tyson Fury. Yeah, as I look, I try to think of what fighter does he remind me of, but you almost think about what fighters, because he seems to be a very complex study with more than one individual. You look at a guy, that big man, moves like Muhammad, jabs a lot. I compare him to Larry Holmes because he's tall and lanky.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the punching power, of George, but he still has the punching power in his hand. So I was watching a highlight of Tim Witherspoon last night, and I watched the fight. I think it was Tim Witherspoon and Larry Holmes, because I thought there might be something might be this might study. So when you look at these guys, he's three fighters, and he's three fighters in one. The guy is it's very complex, and it's a hard guy to study because you don't know what you're going to get with him.
Yeah.
It seems like he has capable knockout. I wouldn't say one punch knockout power, because that's a big difference. But I think as for setting a guy up, knowing what to do, he seems to be a complete package to me.
Yeah, footwork is definitely inspired by Ali, not on the same level, obviously. I mean, it's insane he can move like he can for how big he is.
What is he, like 6'9", 6'8"?
I think 6'7", but I don't.
Damn, he's big, man.
Yeah.
Hey, in my world, David, once you get past about 5'11", it don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you for sure. His complexity really seems to win him most of his fights. By complexity, I guess I should kind of specify. I mean his ability to manipulate rhythm is what reminds me the most of Ali. He can imitate his footwork, but he could never really have the reflexes or the kind of footwork that Ali has. He has an amazing jab, but it's more that it's all within his timing. When I was watching his fight versus Klitschko has an incredible jab. But what Fury would do is it's like he could it's like he's psychic. It's not that he's psychic, it's that he has so much experience that he could read what an opponent's gonna do and then step in just as they're about to step in, just make them think a little bit and just completely knock them off their rhythm.
Sanders Sadler used to call that Sanders Sadler, the great little fellow, would call it anticipation. And Sandy would say, if you can't anticipate what the other guy's going to do, and that's just what this guy Fury seemed to have had. I watched him. I saw a very ordinary fight of his before he fought. No, it's 2 fights before he fought Klitschko. What's the guy name? Oh gosh. Then anyway, it wasn't White. It wasn't one of the big names over there, but he beat the guy. But it's like you said before. He would jab this guy, and the guy was trying to counter him, right? It's as if he knew the guy was going to counter him with this shot. So what he would do, he would go right back with the right hand and hit him again before the guy could get the shot out. And I'm like, how many fighters can do that? Today, in the last 15 years, I hadn't seen anybody that could do that.
It's kind of that lost art of softening them up you were talking about before.
Yes. And that's what he's notorious at doing. The fight with the guy that got after the Tom Schwartz was a guy that I figured that the one he got the back cut. Then that's the one with the back cut, right?
Yeah. So I vaguely remember that fight.
So it's kind of like everybody's kept thinking that he's supposed to walk over this guy. He's just not that kind of fighter. He's not going to do what you think he should do. He's going to do what Tyson Fury thinks he should do. Kind of like we said about Ali as far as adapting in the fight. Before he gets to the fight, brother, I'm going to do with Tyson Fury. He never gives away a game plan, I must admit. But I told everybody, I said before the fight with Wilder that if I'm him, I'd go after Wilder and make him fight. And that's exactly what he did. I mean,
I can't claim to have said that before the fight. I definitely said that during the fight. And I was telling everyone after the first fight, Fury should have gone for a knockout, because the difference from him at the time and Ali is that Ali would go, in his early years at least, would go for the knockout if it was there. He would take out one of the guy's eyes, like he'd always jab to the same eye over and over again. Spot. Yep, and when he couldn't see anymore and he was worn down and he was he was lacking just Ali killer instinct right on it. It didn't take the hardest punch in the world, and I felt, watching the first fight with Wilder, that's what Fury was really building up to, and then it just never happened. He just laid back the whole time and gave Wilder that chance. I
think that we were out in LA for that, and I think that around about the 7th round, right, the 8th round, he started. There have been at 1 minute of doubt. You see a fighter gets once in a blue moon. It's like, no matter how great you are to get this doubt, he's like, I can't knock this guy out. Because he didn't have a problem hitting Wilder. In either fight, did he have a fight hitting Wilder, landing punches on Wilder. But he just felt like, I can't knock this guy out. But the guy was in his corner kept saying, watch out for the right hand. Watch out for the right hand. Because they knew this kid had, they knew that Wilder hadn't really, they knew he had the power, put it like that. But he really hadn't done it. He hadn't done anything. He really hadn't to land that punch. He was just trying to get close. Mm-hmm. And so his anticipation, and like I said, going into that round, once he got his confidence back up again, 9th, 10th, 11th, he decided, okay, I want to get this thing. But that's what happened in the 12th round. He got a little bit too close. Because Wilder shot that thing, I think, in the 11th round, right past his head, about swoop, just a little bit of timing. So whoop. But then finally in the last round, he got it just a little bit because why? If you notice, Fury didn't move his head. That was the one time he didn't move his head.
Just takes one.
So it takes that one shot. He landed that shot, and that's what got it. But of course, that was the difference. I still don't think that was the difference in the fight being a draw. I still thought that Fury won the fight. I really did.
A lot of people did. That's a good segue though into people comparing Wilder to your brother. And the reason they do that is obviously power. They're always about, well, who was the hardest puncher in boxing of all time? And it seems to be between Wilder and your brother in a number of in the minds of a lot of fans. Since people are going to be discussing that in the comments, no doubt, let's tackle that first and then go into a little bit about Wilder's style, what is there, what can be improved, and what happened in the second fight.
Let me just say this, Sonny Liston. But since we're not talking Liston, but I think Liston was the greatest power shot I ever seen, man. The guy was powerful, man.
So you don't think it's either? You think it was Liston?
I think it was Liston.
Really?
Yeah, George could probably be number 2.
Mm-hmm.
See, people didn't see. Well, people just didn't see Liston with the Ferrari. I seen him fight a guy by the name of Sonny Banks. Fought him twice, knocked the guy out, man, like just flat. So I have to throw him in there. But if we're comparing Wilder and George, because again, that was pre-television, and the whole big explosion. So George and Wilder. The only reason I said George used better leverage. Even though George had a tendency when he was younger to get wild, they called it wild. But it wasn't wild. That's just the way he threw shots. He threw every punch. The man wanted to hurt somebody. Dave, that's all it was. He always said that if one thing, man, he wanted to kill somebody in the ring. And the only way you could do that to somebody, you had to hit him as hard as you possibly could.
Yeah.
And that was one fight George had, and he hit the guy. And he hit the guy so hard, bam, the guy goes down. He says, man, what are you trying to do, kill me? And George said, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that, but of course. So
throwing the towel at that point, God.
I mean, that was the ferocity. But he had better leverage than Wilder did. Wilder's a heavy-handed puncher, but Wilder punch is his right hand. We don't know anything about his jab because he just doesn't use it enough. And there's very few fighters, and you ever look at the history of it, that has a punch that could knock you out in either hand. George may have been one of the few guys. Tyson had punching power, and he had that stunning power, like bam, got stunned, finish you with the right hand. But as few guys have that power where both hands can hurt you. Yeah, and George was one of the few, and I just don't think Wilder possesses that.
No, his record might show a higher percentage of knockout rates, but as far as level of competition, the guys he was fighting, that you have to account for that as well.
Yeah, he fought me 22 times. What can I say? That's 22 knockouts right there. But
did you ever spar? Do you ever spar?
Slap on you, Wilder.
Do you ever spar with your brother?
No. George is like 2 feet taller than me. Really. It's like a 4 foot difference in our sizes. I'm like 5'7", 5'8". He's like 6'4". But no, I used to work the hand pass with him, so I got to feel his power.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I tell people, to this day, I have a shoulder that was hurt 30 years ago that's never healed. So
from a shot.
No.
Wow. Yeah, from a shot on the pads.
The power that he has is just remarkable. And I don't usually like using a lot of talking about George a lot because people kind of expect me to say this. So I kind of pull away from that. But in actuality, the punching power that this guy George has, man. And I can talk about as if in third party, but I know the damages he did to the bags in our gym, the heavy bags, the old kind and the new kind. First the water bag, the guy first. He just when he's using his powers, there's nobody matches. And that's why guys tend, they don't want to get hit. Wilder, as I said, we know he has the right hand, but what does he have in this left hand that would make him that 1-2 fight? That's why it's kind of, when you're going against a guy like Fury, like he did each time. Yeah, he landed the right hand, but man, can you imagine if he had a jab to set those punches up and then land the right hand? May not even be talking about a third fight with Fury. Just been first fight, second fight, it would have been over with.
That brings us nicely to the second fight they had, because after the first fight, a lot of people were saying that Wilder needed to develop this, he needed to develop that, and I just feel that he needs more. The one thing he has is his right hand. He doesn't need to be the best boxer in the world. What I think he needs is a million more ways to set up that right hand. I don't know if at this point in his career he's ever going to. And you could agree or disagree. I'm interested in hearing your opinion, but I think that at this point in his career, what he needs to do is learn how to land the right hand by setting it up with the left, whether it's a jab or a hook or what have you. He needs to learn how to set it up moving backwards and circling. And Fury's plan was just so brilliant to me because he realized that he could not throw that right while backing up. There are a few boxers who could, but if that's your only weapon, that completely takes away the one weapon you have.
Well, you just said it. That's like I said at the beginning. It's all about leverage and positioning. In the ring, the whole idea is that the jab is you use the jab to establish, right?
Yeah.
The right hand. You're in a position to throw the right hand. You should always be in the position to come back with the left. That's why they teach 1, 2, 3, right? Most people in the gym go to 1, 2, 3. Well, you have to, if you're not in a position to throw, if all I'm doing is this and this, right? Left hand's going down, right hand's dropping, I'm missing. I'm open for anything that you can hit me with, because why? My hand, I can't move. I haven't moved. You can't look at your work. But Wilder's problem was Ortiz, Gerald Washington, Dominic Brazil, knockouts. Ortiz took him some rounds, but it's the same thing. Ortiz made them the problem of standing there when he didn't. The one time Ortiz stopped moving, he got caught with a shot. In the first fight, he had Wilder on the ropes in that one as well. But Ortiz didn't have he wasn't adapting to anything Wilder wasn't doing. Tyson Fury, his dad, I listened to his dad. His dad has a pretty good knowledge of the sport of boxing as well. So it's one thing to have a guy spend a couple hours in the gym with you, Dave, but then you go home, you got this guy at home with you too, and these guys are talking boxing the whole time. Man, you're steady getting things put in your head.
Education,
I watched him, and in that first fight, you could see in his mind, when he came in at 250 some odd pounds, whatever he was, 260, I knew then this guy had no idea of running. And I said, listen, if I'm him, I go after this guy. You go say, okay, I done took your best shot already, right? You knocked me down twice, like Jake LaMotta used to say to Sugar Ray Robinson. You knocked me down. You couldn't put me down, Joe.
Yeah.
But
that's a great movie too, Raging Bull.
Yeah, great movie. He say, you couldn't put me down, Ray. But Ray Robinson, it was one of them kind of things. I took your best stuff, but I didn't stay down. And I think Tyson Fury said, hey, man, I took your best shot. It was 12 rounds. I was tired. Now let me see what you can do with me coming at you and you still trying to throw those same punches. He couldn't do it. And I think that if I'm Wilder's people, well, it's a fact they're not going to fight now. This COVID might have been the best thing in the world for him. But the last thing I would have wanted to do is jump right back into a rematch. Because some guys you have to figure out. Tyson Fury, you got to figure him out. And no sense in thinking I'm going to go back and get this guy. I'm going to go back and get this guy again. No, it's not going to happen, because he's not going to do what you did the last time did the last time. He's not going to do it that time. Don't expect him to come in at 267 pounds, unless he just been like Tyson, smoking up all the cannabis in the world and not want to train, but but look like Tyson's giving it up. He look like he's in pretty good shape.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
At the same time, don't look for him to come in and be the same guy he was then. I think that he comes back with another game plan. Who knows what it'll be? But so I mean, you can't go back. I think Wilder needs a lot of leg work. I think he needs a lot of strength work. I think he was supposed to be coming down to work with George for a couple of months.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Prior to that, to do some, to get his body. He's a lean guy. How did he be 6'9" and weigh 218 pounds, man? What he came in 230 that night. What if 227? That's like a basketball. That's LeBron James bigger than that. So in a physical match like that, and they're both going. If they fight again, it's going to be physical. You've got to have something you've got better. And as you said before, develop punch, a better punch. Learn how to maneuver, move around. Okay, you want to stand right here, but this time now I'm not going to give you that uppercut. I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to make it to the point where you got to come back here, because that's what he made Wilder do, stretch back and throw punches. Wilder not used to that. Not used to a guy being that close to him. You need room. So just got to adjust to everything that he did before. And I don't want to say whether Breland, I don't know the other guy that was in his corner. I forget his name. It's the other manager trainer. But I don't know. Sometimes these guys get to the point, they want to say that I'm the brains of the outfit, and that's the way it's going to stay, and they get no help. Ronnie Shields could have been a great help to him. Ronnie is another great brain. Sometimes you got to bring in an extra. There's nothing wrong with it. You pay a few dollars, man. Like I'm saying, you're making $20 or $30 million. What's another, $100 grand, a couple $100 grand to give a guy to come down and work with you for a while to help you extend your repertoire. George wasn't going down to no training camp, but he said, you come up here to my place here in Houston or in Marshall at the ranch, I can take you. I can help you with your wind. You can those things that we talked about George that he learned to do later on, the cardio. And I think that Wilder was afraid of running out of gas as well. So, and when it got to the point, this guy just I don't think he was in that great shape. I don't care about you can say he carried a 20-pound something on his chest. I don't know what the hell it was, but I don't know what it was today. But whatever it was, I just don't think he was in that good of a shape. I really don't.
It's kind of the same thing that you were talking about with George, in that he'd never been defeated before. So why take the time to improve? What was working for him was working for him.
That's right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what
exactly. But just because it works for 99% of opponents doesn't mean it's going to work for that last percent.
That's
right. At that level, that's where you're at. You're at that top 1%.
Yeah, at that top 1%. You got a car, man. You go out there and start that car at battery, man. And then the car's going. Then all of a sudden you got a big important date. This girl's waiting. Oh, man, I can't wait to get there. Man, Jesus, man, did you check the battery? When last time you checked the battery? Well, the battery's 5 years old. I didn't think 5 years old battery. Well, that's what it is sometimes. You have to use that mentality. I use that, but that's sometimes the simpler thing, as you said, works. But you have to make a change in order to make it work.
Do you think he has a chance at all in a third fight?
I hate to say never, but he'd have to really show me something to think that he has a chance. I don't think anybody beats Tyson Fury.
Really?
I know we're gonna jump to Joshua, but I don't think Anthony Joshua look like he has the strength to do it. But I don't see anybody beating Tyson Fury. I really don't.
Well, let's talk about Joshua then. Watching Joshua, he's definitely a physical specimen. He's got a lot of power, a lot of strength. What freaks me out about his style is that when I watch Joshua, he seems to have some of the best and worst head movement at the same time that I've ever seen any fighter have. When he initiates the exchange, he can duck in low like Frazier can, and then hit the body, and then rise up, which is really what ended the fight with Klitschko. Before the fight was officially ended, was this beautiful uppercut. He ducked down, hit the body like 2 or 3 times, and then got his head out of the way as he came up. But in contrast, when he's just standing at range, if he's not throwing, he might move his head a little bit here and there, but it's almost like kickboxer head movement. Kickboxers are scared of getting kneed or kicked, so they just move their head very slightly, and sometimes, most of the time, he just doesn't move it at all. When he leaves exchanges, it's the same thing. So he throws his shots, and then he's right back to that upright posture. and it gets him caught so many times. It's how Klitschko knocked him down too. Like Klitschko
Well,
didn't set anything up. He just punched him right in the face, and his head was there.
well, see, that comes from Josh is one of those guys. Great artists like to look at their work, right? And that's what he reminds me of. He likes to look at what he's done. He hits you and like, oh boy, so he's always just about open to some kind of, especially a guy that's up there with him. I mean, like a Klitschko, like a Wilder, like a Fury. So the great artists, they do this and they
admire, like, oh, that was really
right.
Look at that.
That's him. That's what you're right. That's what got him knocked down in those fights. The Charles Martin fight, with nothing much to that, but he had made up his mind in the Martin fight. I'm just going to go out and blister this guy. Martin had nothing to offer him at all anyway, which I can't blame you. It's a title fight, so you take it, right? But he had made up his mind he was going to go out and blister him. I'm going to get you, which moved us to the Ruiz fight. The same thing, because he was supposedly fighting with Big Baby Martin, I think Baby Miller. That's the original fight was supposed to have been Big Baby Miller. I forget his real first name, but they call him Giant Baby Miller, right?
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
We like to eat a lot, evidently, because that's what got him 312 pounds. Hell, it lets me know he liked to eat.
Yeah.
But but he tested positive for the stuff, so of course he gets pulled out. But he had trained in that fight for the same way, because why? Charles Martin didn't move. Miller had decent hand speed, but he didn't move. Andrew Ruiz is the two-ton Tony Galento of our days.
Yeah,
round body.
That's a good comparison for sure.
Straight come ahead at you, but he didn't move. So what happens? Every time Whitey get knocked down, he hit Ruiz with a shot. He's standing right there, never moved. Ruiz just came back and hit him with a shot. He's going to have to adapt, especially, and I would say if he fought Wilder, he couldn't fight Wilder that way. He really couldn't. He can't fight Wilder standing in front of him like that, not observing his work. They'll have to teach him how to pivot, move out of the way. I actually thought Klitschko had that fight won. I mean, it was like, I was, because again, you got this big muscle specimen. Don't get me wrong, Klitschko's nothing. About themselves, they're pretty big guys too. As a matter of fact, those probably two of the biggest guys I ever met in my life in the fights. I didn't realize it was that size till I seen them the first time. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are giants.
No, it's like seeing an NBA player. It's like, oh my God, right. You could pick me up by my head. What the? Wait a minute, you could pop my head and lift me up. It's crazy.
I'm doing an interview, right? This was in 2000. They were doing this movie called Play It to the Bone, I think it was. They were taping a movie in Vegas. And of course, George is in the ringside, Jim Lampley, all the guys, but Lennox Lewis was a character in the fight. Lennox, Klitschko, his brother, the Klitschko's, I should say, they were there. This other guy, the 6'5" guy, what's his name? The guy from Pulev, I think his name was. No, not Pulev. He was like 7'2", the Russian guy. He had won the title. Holyfield, I think he fought Holyfield. The 7'2" giant. Man, all these guys were there, right? And here I am with a microphone, trying to interview.
Just like,
it's like, oh, okay. Well, what do you think about that? Okay, each one, it was so funny. But I'm like, damn, is this a basketball game or this a boxing match? Well, that's, and I say that with Joshua, is that he's going to have to, he could be champion for a long time, but he's got to make and adapt to his skills a whole lot. Because right now, I don't see him having boxing skills. Good puncher, can do some things with his hands, but lacks very good foot movement. He's just a big guy with all the muscles, and everybody knows that the muscles takes up the oxygen anyway. So when you start throwing those power shots, I would hate to be in the ring with Tyson Fury if I'm him and got tired. I don't think you see the fight going much longer than it did against Wilder.
I agree on all those points. I think Joshua definitely has untapped potential, which seeing as he's already holding most of the belts and he has all this untapped potential and things that could be corrected, then he can definitely be a force to be reckoned with. I think he made some slight adjustments, mostly to do with his jab in the second Ruiz fight, which is like really encouraging. So I think if he had a really, really good trainer, someone who could find his weaknesses and then take him to the next level and have him be as good as he is when he's throwing. If he could be as good at everywhere else, then I think he could give them Wilder and Fury some trouble.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if that happens or not is debatable.
Well, you don't get to that level without being better than, like you said, that 1%. Mm-hmm. You don't get that level being better than the other 99%. That's where you go. So, and sometimes it's just a matter of one little twitch. Mm-hmm. I don't know I have no idea who his trainers are. I don't know his trainers. But I'm
not sure either.
I
probably should have researched because we're doing a podcast on him.
Right. I guess it would be a good idea to know, right?
Yeah.
But I knew that for a long time with the Klitschko's. When I remember when they brought in Emmanuel Stewart. I remember that for so many years before that. They were doing things pretty much on their own. They had a guy over there with them, but they brought in Emmanuel Stewart.
Probably the best coach of all time.
The best, probably outside. I always say it's two coaches, but I think I have three coaches in this boxing. If I ever had to pick it would be Percy Miller, Eddie Futch, and Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's sometimes, David, that's that age thing. Sometimes, you have to call up reserve.
Oh, believe me, that's me too. It's not an age thing. Sometimes the brain just decides to stop working.
Well,
it's like you said, the date with the girl, right? When does your brain decide to stop working? When it matters, and then you're driving home. Oh, I should have said that. That's why I'm happy I have a wife. If she's not impressed with me, it's like, okay, fine. I'll tell her later.
I ain't got to go on one of those these days, man. Trust me. Yeah. But no, I mean, so I would like to see him. The Europeans have held the title for so many years. We always felt like the title belonged to America, right? Mm-hmm. Because we had it. And I remember when George won the title, he says, it's a world title for a reason. And because somebody was asking him, George was, at the time, he was the only champion to ever win his title on American soil and lose it on foreign soil and lose it on a foreign soil. He won it in Kingston, Jamaica. He lost it in Africa. He defended it each time. He never defended his title in America. He defended against Joe Roman in Tokyo, Japan, Ken Norton in Caracas, Venezuela, and Ali in Africa. So he always said it's a world title. And when Ali won the title the second time from George, where did he go? He went around the world, Kuala Lumpur, some other places, Germany. So now, but it was still an American title. So prior to, I think Bruno won it for a minute, and Tyson got him back, got it back from him, and then we held it here for so many years. Then the Klitschko's came along, and they held it for the last 10 years. So it switched hands. So the thing about what's made the sport what it's become, the global sport that it is because we've had people from other parts of the world winning this title. Like I said, we had the guy, the big giant. I cannot think of the giant guy, but the guy wasn't Poland. He had it.
I know who you're talking about. He has those incredibly defined brow ridges.
Yeah, brows. Yeah.
I forget his name though.
So then you had the Klitschko's who won it from the Ukraine or wherever that part of the country they were from. And then it's there. It's been everywhere except China and Japan right now. And I mean, basically because there's nobody big enough over there. But
yeah, but I mean, give it 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Right, give it 20 years. They'll put enough McDonald's and Burger Kings over there.
Oh God, yeah.
they'll catch up with us.
Mm-hmm. Everyone does eventually. All right, let's talk about the last thing, which is the fantasy fights, which are never going to happen unless your brother decides to make a second comeback.
Don't start
for
that,
some
David.
Reason.
Please.
To talk him out of that if he tries. But,
right.
Or don't. Everyone's screaming don't talk him out of it. I mean, Tyson's coming back supposedly. So who would you take? We have the top three heavyweights from that golden era. Ali, Frazier, Foreman, and then the top three heavyweights from this era: Joshua, Wilder, Fury. You don't need to answer on Joshua if you don't think he would give him any trouble at all, or you could.
Well, he's the champion, so he's the champion, so we got to include him.
I think so.
There's no wrong with that. If it's a round robin, let's say, because it's three guys, right?
Mm.
I guess in the opening fight, the better one would probably, because of styles, would be Frazier fighting Fury first because of his resentment.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
because of his
the smallest guy versus the tallest
smallest,
guy.
the big guy, and with
Yeah.
his relentless, style, well, coming forward. Could Tyson Fury handle that? I would love to see. I would love to see that fight. I know everybody talks about it now, but that would be the one for me. That would be the first one.
Depends if he could take body shots.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we don't know that yet. That's what I mean. Nobody dug that, but Joe Frazier would definitely find out.
Oh,
and
yeah. Immediately.
And I guess the second fight would probably, I'd like to see Ali and Wilder, for the simple reason is that Wilder had that big right hand and would try to throw it. That would try to hit Ali. That would be what he would try to do, I think. He's not going to jab him. He's not going to out jab him for sure. Because even at 6'9" or 6'8", whatever he is, he's not going to out jab Ali because Ali's going to be moving on him. And
Ali hated to work the body, though. Do you think Ali would be jabbing up there? That's what I'm curious about.
I think that he would because Wilder would be forced to be the aggressor against him, because Ali wasn't aggressive against anybody. That's what made him. He wouldn't. I can't. That's the Jimmy Young fight. A lot of people thought he lost that fight, Ali, because he was forced to be the aggressor that night, and Young made everybody look bad, right?
Yeah,
Young is as bad as Ali was making people miss.
Just
so
ducking behind the ropes sometimes. Yeah.
So Ali had to force the fight. He had to force him to go. So Ali was forced. He looked bad in that fight. That's why people say, "Oh, well, Jimmy Young won that fight." No, Ali had to be the aggressor, and that just wasn't what Ali was used to. That's why the fight against George Young looked a little different, because George was trying to take his head off. But so I would like to see that fight. And then, of course, that would lead to two big guys, the two punchers, George and Joshua. I would love to see that, because George fought a couple of big guys before, Boone Kirkman, Jack O'Halloran, giant 6'6" guys, 6'7" guys who were big like that. Norton was muscular, not that tall, 6'3" maybe. But I would like to see that fight. And then just to see a red round robin, which of those guys would come out. But I really, at the end of the night, I see all, and I know it's hard to sometimes come in. We're just talking hypothetically, fantasy. But and there are other things that I put into fights, David, that a lot of people don't pour in. I pour hungerness into a fight. Because fighting is a hunger sport. Different periods, at that period of time, those guys were definitely a lot more hungrier than these guys are now.
Frazier would have freaked out Fury or Wilder or Joshua,
Or Joshua, right?
Yeah.
So
from the start, from the first round, everyone, I mean, they did back then too, but more nowadays, the first two rounds are feel-out rounds, Yeah. Whereas Frazier, I feel like, would have gotten right to it.
Right at him.
Yeah.
He went right at George. George just met him in the ring and said, "Hey, man, I'm taking control of this spot right here. This is mine." And that's just what he did. He just couldn't move him back. Joe didn't fight very well backing up, because he wasn't used to fighting that. They didn't think it would be any different that night. So that's why I say that those would be my three guys that I would put in against each other. And with that, in the round robin, I guess you still say, does it kind of come out the same way? George knocks out Frazier. Frazier beats Ali one fight. George knocks out Frazier. Ali beats George. So that's the historical part of it. But no, those would be. I just think that the 70s was a greater period, and I just still, because the fact that these guys grew up at a different time when they were younger, and they were really trying to prove something. And let's face it, back then, if you didn't win, you didn't get the big money. You can lose a fight now. You can make $20 million and lose a fight. Are you really a loser?
You got more money than most people on earth.
Hey, man, did you really lose? My banker thinks I won. That's just the way it is. So back then, you had to. It was almost like a pyramid. You had to win, and they fought hard to win each and every time. Nowadays, here they're saying Wilder gets knocked out in the fight. They're talking about a rematch. They're talking about paying him more money in the rematch than they made in the first fight. Oh my God!
So there's no penalty for getting
no penalties
for
at all
nowadays.
Not at all, and it's controlled by the promoters. So that's what are you going to do? Television promoters control all of that. What are you going to do?
I agree with those being the best fights. I would like to see George versus Fury because they both they both have tremendous jabs, but in different ways. They both have amazing footwork, but in different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about George past his loss to Ali when he'd gained the idea of boxing, the boxing knowledge he had afterwards, to where he's more setting things up, taking his time, that kind of thing.
The studious George, as I call it.
Yeah, I'm really curious if he could corner Fury, and I think he can, because even Wilder at times with his footwork managed to corner Fury.
Corner him,
yeah. And I think if he got him in the corner and started unloading on him, it really would come down to durability, Yeah,
it would. George would hit him in the body.
Yes.
That's what he would do, because he knows he's going to try to run.
Yeah,
so
and he gets you chasing his head because he's tall and he can just lean back out of the way.
It don't make sense to go up here, So what's more of a guy? You try to teach that to a kid in the gym. What's the biggest part of the guy's his body? Is the stomach. Okay, well, why are you trying to hit his little head then? Okay. So I agree. Yeah, that would be a good one too. And I just think that, from that and from a physical standpoint, again, I use George's strength and power. George's strength was stronger than any of these guys, and that's still that means a lot too.
Yeah, Fury likes to lean on people. If Fury had tried to lean on your brother or on Frazier, I don't think it would have gone well for him.
No, it wouldn't have gone too well for him. I don't think it'd have gone well. I think you see a knockout. I really do. I think you do.
All right. Well, I think that's everything. Thank you for this interview.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad. This is the person, I don't get a lot of chance to open up with people that has knowledge of the history of the sport as well. The thing about being able to bring your history into the sport of boxing, along with the knowledge, and that's what makes being able to talk about it usually with somebody, and I like that. So especially for such a young guy.
You're fun to talk to. We should definitely do this again at some point.
I'm looking forward to it.